We'll continue to read today, July 1st, 2024, Getting to Know You. We're on Chapter 5, page 12. This is the third pickup of the day. We met by chance, the odds of being in favor of our never meeting, but by a set of strange circumstance, we're meshed one together, and from the beginning of the hour of mystical awareness of one another that blossomed into a cordial friendship and quickly evolved in a mutual love for one another. And is usually the case, when I had been with Anne for several days, I had a difficult time adjusting back to Army life. The rumor about going overseas had increased in the past several days. We could see it most visibly now in our training, where areas that had been intensive and grueling is now subdued, and there is no longer the spirited drive to get in as much as possible. We were sitting around the barracks a great deal more now, and for the Army that was a definite negative. Finally, during the middle of the week, we were told by two commencing next week, 15-day furloughs would be issued.
15-day furlough.
15 days of furlough would be issued the next week, and the entire company, perhaps the entire division, would be out of camp on furlough. That night I called Ann after 2,100 hours, and I told her the news. She seemed pleased and disappointed at the same time, which I could not understand. I also told her what was transpiring here at camp, that there was a definite change coming about and would involve the entire division. She asked about the weekend pass, and I told her they're not issuing any passes for the immediate future. We talked further, and I finally said that I'd call her in a few days. She quietly said goodbye, I love you, and take care of yourself, and hung up the phone. I was distressed that I would neither give her any more information nor be more positive. This was to become the most difficult and frustrating time in our relationship. Not knowing what was going to happen from day to day disturbed me to no end. The next morning, Aunt P.T. Larson approached me and asked where I had been for the last several weeks, as he had not seen me around camp. Not wishing to talk about my private affairs, I told him that I had been here and there, and that our paths have just not crossed. He then told me that he had gotten a letter from Lane last week, and he was a civilian again and enjoyed it very much. It seemed that he was at the Brooks. They discovered our irregular heartbeat after an exhaustive diagnostic test, giving him a medical discharge several weeks. I was glad for Lane. His ordeal of our anxiety and over could be once again enjoy being a husband and father. Larson said to meet him in the PX, and we had chewed the fat. Somehow that did not appeal to me, and I could think of a much better things to do. I became cynical regarding time away from Anne, and I felt there was a deliberate conspiracy to keep us apart. Naturally, I knew you thought there was a conspiracy to keep you apart, huh? Naturally, I thought that was not the case, but it seemed that every time I would get something going for myself, someone or something would invariably get in the way and intrude on my good fortune. After we returned from the Post Theater, where they were shown propaganda films and the latest developments of the ETO, European Theater of Operations, there was a posted lengthy list of men on furlough the next morning. Peering over the heads of most of the men in the barracks, I did not think my name was on it. I would have to look more closely after the initial crowd had thinned out. No, I was certainly not on it, but half the company was. I was disappointed, but relieved perhaps I could see Ann during the interim. I found out later why I was not on a furlough list. Sergeant Flood had requested me for a special detail. I was naturally curious as to the nature of the assignment, and strangely, I could not find Sergeant Flood anywhere about. Earlier the next afternoon, there was a posted detail roster on the bulletin board and had my name on it. It seemed eerie to see half the barracks empty. I knew they were gone as an empty bunk had its mattress rolled up toward the wall. Where there was once a body lying there, now there was only a bare springs of a bunk showing. I had met with Sergeant Flood in his detail. We were told our duties for the next several days. We were to inventory the entire supply room, clothing, ammunition, weapons, equipment, and whatever else there were. We were told to complete the assignment by 0500 hours Monday. Was that a big job, inventorying everything? Right. You had to inventory everything at Camp Breckenridge.
Individual clothes, right?
Was that a big job?
Well, how much did you have?
There I thought,
what the hell's the inventory anyway?
There I thought goes my chance of seeing Ann. Sergeant Flood explained to us that he individually picked us, knowing that we would do a first-rate job as expeditiously as possible. We were there to start the next morning right after breakfast. I was glad for the detail as it relieved the boredom that was setting in with much free time available. We were broken up to teams. The work was tedious but rewarding. As we crossed out each page of inventory I completed, I did not realize that there'd be so much equipment and material stored in one of the supply rooms. We worked 16 hours a day with only a usual time off for chow and sleep. I managed to squeeze in a call to Ann and told her that half of the company had left on furlough and I expected to go by the beginning of the next week. I would call her before I left, and I would certainly call her during my furlough. Ann sounded despondent, but she tried unsuccessfully to hide it from me. I felt bad for her, but did not convey my feelings to her. As usual, she closed by saying she loved me and she missed me very much. It seemed as though we would attain Sergeant Flood's goal of completely inventory by Monday morning. As it happened, how many minutes?
21. Oh, we're just videotaping.
As it happened, we all volunteered to stay over after 24 hours on Sunday to complete it. We finished a little bit after 0100 hours Monday, a little bit ahead of schedule. Sergeant Flood called us into the mess hall that morning after completing inventory, where Sergeant Meadows had prepared a snack for us in the form of a large sheet cake with all our names on top of it in red icing. We were all pleased with this gesture as a token of appreciation for the task we had accomplished. In a way, I was saddened that the task was completed, for now we're being sitting around the barracks, wasting time that can be used in a more beneficial way. Sergeant Flood thanked us for the cooperation and the outstanding work we had performed. We would certainly keep in mind whenever there was a time that could be of assistance to us. He sat and talked to us, enjoying our cake and coffee, relieved that the detail was over, and delighted we had done a good job. As I was walking back to my barracks, Sergeant Flood stopped me and thanked me personally for a job well done. especially how I'd taken control of the major task of the actual inventory. I told him I had worked in a large department store while I was in school, and I was familiar with that type of work. He thanked me again and then remarked rather seriously that we'd be going through furlough beginning Tuesday morning. He also said in a calm and deliberate manner that he was aware I was making frequent trips to Owensboro. On my return from furlough, I'd be afforded the opportunity, if available, as a 24-hour pass as well as the weekends, as I desired. I was startled by this pronouncement and thanked him sincerely. He then said sheepishly, I told you to keep your nose clean and your mouth shut, and you'll go places in this man's army. With that profound statement, he bid me good night and walked towards his barracks. I could not wait to tell Ann the news. Well, the bad news, the good news. The night after 2100 hours, I reached her at home and told her about my leaving on furlough the next morning. I could detect the disappointment in her voice, and I felt, as she did, for 15 days we could have spent together, and instead I'd be spending a dull, uneventful time at home. I told her I would call her regularly, and I miss her greatly. I then told her the good news that I'd have unlimited past possibilities when I returned home from furlough. She did not understand that I repeated that Sergeant Flood discussed with me, and how an appreciation for helping him out. I was given the opportunity of unlimited passes. Ann perked up with the news. I felt better, but I still felt as though I was deserting her, when in reality I was. I understood the emotion, but I could not tear myself away from the compulsion making the ill-begotten trip back home. Where I had felt the same emotions before on leaving for the service a while back, I then realized that I thought I had changed and I had gotten rid of all the dire for hapless emotional baggage. Evidently I had not. For if I had, I would not hesitate for 1 minute to be with Ann my entire furlough. I thought I'd started to feel things for myself and do them for myself rather than be obligated to someone else, always to be at their beck and call. My feelings and desires counted for something. I was not left alone, and someone sincerely cared for me. I guess it had not changed as much as I thought I had. Ann was beginning to realize and probably detected a serious flaw in my personality. One that she could not help me with, no matter how hard she tried to correct it. For all my good intentions, what it really came down to was reluctance to change. If I had the same sense then, I would have heeded my instincts, gone on furlough with Ann, and never looked back on my other life. But I am compelled by some inner force to return home and play the role of a dutiful son. This was a turning point in my life, and I did not have good sense to realize it and seize upon it. Rather, I fell victim to the habit and conditioning and started the next morning back to the life which I desperately wanted to sever. I said goodnight to Ann, that I loved her and would miss her for the next several weeks. I sensed that we both felt there was another path we could take besides the one we're on now. That was to stay in Owensboro, possibly marriage, and then visit home. This I felt very strongly, and I'm sure Ann sensed my feelings, but would never bring up the subject. Minutes?
Yeah.
It is 15 minutes. Hey, John.
Huh?
15 minutes.
Okay, I am sure Ann sensed my feelings, but would never bring up the subject. I wanted to say these very words and even more to bring them to fruition, but that was something driving me into the opposite direction. I felt frustrated and more worse. I felt I had let Ann down. It was never the thought of a possibility of not coming back, and feasibly of being severely maimed or crippled. I never considered these options. I felt I had let Ann down. Hold on a second. You have to get to Mannheim soon. I got an offer pending.
Okay.
But we'll wait. It's a low ball, so hang on. I said goodnight to Ann and that I loved her and would miss her for several weeks. I wanted to say those very words. I felt frustrated, and worse, I felt I had let Ann down. It was never the thought or possibility or not coming back, nor the feasibility of being severely maimed or crippled. I never considered these options. Put into another context, if I eliminated my so-called obligation to my mother and my sister, there would not be the remotest possibility of my returning home. I would not hesitate to ask Ann if she would marry me. If she consented, I would feel perfectly at ease at my decision and taking my chances with the Army. As it so happens, I could not do this for whatever reason, and would agonize over this dilemma of not being able to resolve it in the months and years to come. I received my furlough papers and my travel money. How much travel money did I give you, Mr. Jeckovich?
$125.
That's it. And made one stop at the post cleaners for a clean uniform and underclothing for the following morning. I then boarded the bus for Evansville that would take me to the train for my journey north. Do you have any regrets on that 15-day furlough that you went north 300 miles
Yeah.
to Niagara Falls, New York,
That's colder.
to see your mother?
Yeah.
Or do you feel in hindsight that you should have went 40 miles east to be with Ann in Owensboro?
Yeah.
What do you think now as you're looking back on it?
Well, it was something you had to do.
So you went north,
Yeah.
300 miles to be with your mother for that 15 days versus going 40 miles west to be with Ann in Owensboro, correct?
Yeah.
That's what you did. You have no regrets to that?
No.
Okay, that's good. Let's keep on going. As here you're on the bus. Listen, Mr. Jeckovich, here you're on the bus. You're going north 300 miles to see your mother. As I pass the turnoff for Owensboro, here you are, you're passing Ann. You're passing Ann. Past the turn to Owensboro, I thought here's my last chance for a new, better life. I should grasp it and count my blessings. I did not pull the cord. Will they have cords on these buses back then?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that would indicate to the driver to stop?
Yeah.
Minutes? And so I did not pull the cord.
11.
I did not pull the cord to signal the driver, and I wanted to get off. But instead, I sat there stoically and watched as my future fleeted by, never to be captured again. So you're sitting on the bus. Was the bus crowded?
Yeah, they're all going home.
Okay. And you're going to Niagara Falls, New York. Okay. So on your initial trip to Niagara Falls, New York, you're in an old-fashioned bus that has these cords up on top where you pull down the damn cord, it'll beep and the driver will stop immediately.
Yeah.
And you could have gone to Owensboro. But you sat there and just watched as you went by Owensboro, right?
Yeah.
And now you don't have no regrets to that, right?
No.
Okay, good. I want to make that point clear. I got the train out of Evansville for Louisville and points east, and then sat there and watched the scenery start buzzing by as the train started to pick up. I did not pull the cord when I wanted to get off, but stoically watched my future fleet by. Oh, I got the train out of Evansville for Louisville. Now you're into a train and points east. Then sat there and watched the scenery starting to buzz by the train station and started to pick up speed. I felt as I was also speeding away my destiny, my future, my expectations with Anne. The faster the train went, the more I was convinced that I had made an extraordinary blunder. So while you got into a bus, you went to a train, and now you're starting to think you might have made a blunder.
Yeah.
You're not going to Owensboro. Let's see how it turns out. Let me keep reading. I was beside myself. I wanted to get off the train and return to Owensboro. You never got off the train.
No.
You never got off the train. And tell Ann that I would never leave her again. And I wanted to be with her forever and would make a life with her besides me. I wanted to do all this, but instead, Mr. Jeckovich did nothing but watch the scenery flash by, taking me further and further away from where I belonged, which was Ann in Owensboro, you said.
Yeah.
We made a short trip to Louisville, and it was here that we picked up a large contingent of servicemen, all heading in the same direction, the East Coast. So now the train's pretty well full, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's in their uniform, right?
Yeah.
There were more servicemen than civilians, and as I felt as though I was on a troop train rather than a regular passenger train. After Louisville, we continued on to Cincinnati and then to Columbus, Ohio. We would arrive at Columbus a little after midnight, and a porter suggested we get off the train and stretch our legs at the station, as we had about an hour layover. So now you're in Columbus, Ohio. The train stopped, probably to refuel. And the porter says, hey, you servicemen better get off and walk around a bit. You've been on this train for a long time.
Yeah.
Did you stay in the train or did you go out and walk around?
Well, I walked around, but I walked around the sidewalk beside the train.
Was it a nice train? Do you remember what the train looked like?
It was a Pullman.
A Pullman.
Yeah.
About how many cars were in this Pullman?
I think it was about 4.
That's nice. And what speed did you get to?
I say about 60.
That's fast on a train, isn't it?
Yeah.
Minutes? Minutes?
7.
I felt dejected and lonely. With millions of faces all around me, there was not one person I could relate to and seek consoling about. Strolling about the station, I thought about calling Ann, decided not. So you had an hour break. You're outside a train station or Columbus, Ohio. Was there many payphones?
The
At the
train
train
station?
station.
Yeah.
So you thought about calling Ann. I wonder why you didn't. Do you have any idea?
The phones were busy.
Okay, the phones were busy. The phones were busy. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. It was after midnight and there was not enough time to talk about how sorry I was for leaving her. The train pulled out of Columbus a half an hour later than expected, and luckily there was no all-night card players in our card. So many times you'd have these guys playing cards, which would be very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were they drinking too?
Yeah, drinking and everything, yeah.
Raising hell.
In the dining room.
But you didn't get involved in that, right?
Huh?
You didn't get involved in
that
that
stuff.
No, okay, good. The porter turned off the overhead lights to make it dark enough to try to sleep. I twisted and turned in my seat, trying to get reasonably comfortable. As I closed my eyes, I could visualize Ann. Minutes?
5 minutes.
As I closed my eyes, I could visualize Ann as she looked the night as she waited for me at the bus station.
Yeah, boy.
How was that? How did she look? Tell us.
Huh?
How did Ann look at the bus station the last time you seen her?
I didn't follow up or anything, huh?
But when last time you seen her, describe how she looked.
Yeah.
How'd she look? Very nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Hair nice. Clothes nice. Perfume intoxicating. As I closed my eyes, I could visualize Ann as she looked that night as she waited for me at the bus station. As I stirred in my seat, trying to get comfortable, I peered out the window. It was pitch dark outside. I got a glimpse momentarily of an isolated streetlight and occasionally a car traveling on the highway alongside the train. You must have been passing a lot of cars running parallel, because if that train's going 60,
Yeah.
I doubt many cars were doing that speed in the 1940s. It was not until the train had come to a complete stop that I wondered where we were. I rolled up the shade on my window, and it was daylight outside. As I asked the porter where we were, he stated that we're in Erie. You're familiar with Erie, Pennsylvania, aren't you?
Yes, what?
You're in Erie, Pennsylvania now.
Oh, yeah.
You're very familiar with Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
On Highway 90 from New York to Pennsylvania, you must at this point went through Erie, Pennsylvania many a times.
Yeah.
Many a times. It was only we would be moving again very shortly. It was only a short distance to Buffalo from Erie. I guess we should arrive there about 9:30 hours. So you'd be at Buffalo about 9:30.
In the morning.
Yeah, then you'd probably take a cab from Buffalo to Niagara Falls, right? Or a
Yeah.
bus. Buffalo was at the end of the lines as far as the train ride was concerned, and I would now take a bus to the falls. I found out the next bus left for the falls approximately 11:30 hours, and it would be on time. I had enough time at the station restroom to tidy up a bit. I shaved and put on a clean uniform I had slept in and worn this one the entire train trip. The bus to the falls was strange, since I was used to seeing familiar sights around Owensboro, and my anticipation level was higher than it was now. Minutes?
2.
I realized how I looked. I recalled how I would look forward to seeing Ann. So as you got off the train and the bus, you realized then how you really missed Ann, because normally when you get off at Owensboro, it was a great excitement to see Ann,
Yeah.
a familiar face, and now you have none. How would we kiss and hug one another and plan our entire weekend around each other's company? There was none of that euphoria displayed now as we pulled into the George Terminal at the falls.
Yeah.
The city, meaning Niagara Falls, looked more disheveled and dingier than I remembered it. So it was dingy and disheveled and dirty. As I waited for the bus to take me home, I could not relinquish the cloud of despair that had come over me. I wanted to turn around and leave the place and never look back, but of course I did not. So when you got to the falls, you weren't happy immediately. The place looked rough, and you wanted to get on that bus so badly, take it to Buffalo, get on a train and go back to Owensboro. That's what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
You never did it.
No.
You never did it. Okay, that is the end of chapter 5. Minutes?
Yeah, we got 1 minute left, so I think we're just, wrapping
That's the
it up
end of
here.
chapter 5. So in the docu-series would be number 123 on July 2nd, 2024. We'll begin on chapter 6, which is Home on Furlough and Farewell to Ann. Farewell to Ann. This will start on page 118. Minutes?
War
Yeah.
talk, war talk.
Huh?
Didn't you say that was war talk?
War talk.
How many minutes?
War talk, war talk. I thought it was
45
war talk.
Give me the pen or something. So what do you say that the docu-series will pick up tomorrow, and then we'll read about you home on furlough, and that's the
How
last
long was the furlough? 15 days.
15 days.
Yeah.
And you were in Niagara Falls that whole time, and I
Yeah.
imagine that your mother probably put you right to work.
Yeah, she fed me well.
Seconds?
10.
All right, tomorrow we'll pick you up. July 2nd, God willing. God willing.
Sounds good.
This book got a lot